Good morning, everybody. It is Spiritual Healthcare Day 24. I hope everybody is having a fantastic Easter weekend. As we know, the long weekend is nearly over, but I mean, for the most part, it doesn't matter because none of us are working anyway. So I hope you guys had an amazing Easter. We'll wait for some people to log on here. We've got a really great show today about a very specific topic. I'm really looking forward to diving into this because I've had a lot of questions about it just over the years that I've been a paranormal researcher. And so we're going to address the idea of grief from a number of different angles today, and the different kinds and how to find your joy when something has happened or you're in and working through the grief process, which can come in multiple forms. So we're going to be delving into that today. I've got a really powerful question that I can't wait to address this afternoon. Good morning, Mark. Mark says he misses my rabbit ears. I know. They're away now. I miss my rabbit ears too. Good morning, Darren. It's good to see you guys. Say hi in the chat box, everybody. If I miss any questions or anything like that, as I say, please ask questions in the chat. If I don't get to them, I always go back afterwards and read everything and try to get them the next day. So please try to throw them in there anyway. They're not getting ignored. Good morning, Daryl. Good morning, Des. Good morning, Paula. Hey, Paula. I can't wait, as I say, to get into all of this today. We've got such a fantastic audience. Good morning, Jan. And Stephanie, oh man, yeah, from Kentucky, yay, Kentucky. Hey, Shadow. It's so good to see everybody this morning. As I say, today we're going to be tackling a really great subject that I think is so important for the time that we're living in. As I say, I've gotten asked a lot about this throughout the 20 years that I've been doing paranormal research and using and educating people in both teaching the living and throughout the post-secondary colleges and things like that. And that is the subject of grief. Good morning, Dan. It is a profoundly complex subject in a lot of ways because people often think of grief like they are grieving something, a person that they've lost. They think they have to have a physical loss, right, in order to experience grief. And that's simply just not true. Grief can come in so many different arenas, so many different areas of our lives. And as we're moving through this new experience of COVID-19, moving through this new experience of just trying to reorient ourselves.
Oh my God.
Okay, I'm turning my sound off and my notifications off on my phone because otherwise you're going to be hearing Bob Belcher from Bob's Burgers for the next number of minutes. So we'll just turn the notifications off. Yeah, but it is funny. It is funny. But yeah, so we're going to talk about grief, what that looks like, and because a lot of people have been messaging me and they're trying to pinpoint what emotion they've actually been feeling. Some people are feeling kind of displaced. Some people are feeling like they are trying to reorient themselves into what they're supposed to be doing now. I know a lot of you guys have lost work, lost your jobs, and people who have lost companies, and people who have lost individuals as well, because of course we're losing people to the virus and things like that. So I want to address that. I also want to address another question from Jack on Twitter today also, because he's got some great had a great question about sort of the afterlife and stuff like that and survival after death. So we're going to get into that, but I wanted to start with Paula's question because I think it is so powerful and so important. And she says, I was wondering if you could do a show on grieving a child or grief. I lost my teenager in October from cancer, and it really has been the worst 2 years of my life, and I need to know that he is okay. And thank you so much, Paula, for this question. Thank you for trusting me with this question. And it actually is going to lead into Jack's as well. And I think one of the first things, the big misnomers about, I think, paranormal research and the sort of the ghost shows, the ghost hunting shows that have been on TV have not helped with this stereotype that people think they pass away and somehow they'll die a terrible death or a tragic death, or something was unfinished, or and they somehow get stuck. And I just so want to dispel that notion, because the research that has been done, the clinical research that has been done through places like the Windbridge Institute and Pear at Princeton and all of these different locations, these amazing universities that are delving into this, simply have not found that to be the case. And when you look into even channeling sessions by, if you subscribe to things like Edgar Cayce and things like that, or Abraham Hicks, you start to realize really quickly that that's just simply not the case. The idea that these people are getting stuck, that they are, somehow needing help and they're desperate for help, sadly, became kind of a money grab throughout history, because what ended up happening was that people began to realize that if individuals believed that their loved ones were stuck, then they would ask for money to be able to cross these people over. So it's become a bit of a money grab. It makes for a lot of drama and whatnot, but there really isn't evidence when it comes down to the research to back that up. I've been doing this for 20 years. I have never run into that. I have all the encounters that I have had have been spirits that have popped in and out, have come and started to, that are interacting with us and things like that. I have never experienced a situation where I felt that somebody is stuck somewhere or hurt in that way. So I think that's the first thing to really blow up right at the beginning of this, which is a little bit of Jack's question as well. What do we do to help these spirits? We've got to understand that this energy, this all that is, this non-physical energy, we really have to understand that this is universal energy. It hasn't needed our help. It really hasn't. It hasn't needed our help before this, and it's not going to need it going forward. The universe has got this. It's figured out that transition process. It's figured out that death process. And we really can take a step back from that and just focus on ourselves. The thing is that when we hear about these, so-called spirits with unfinished business and things like that, the unfinished business is usually us. It's usually us. We're the ones with the unfinished business. When we lose somebody, or we lose a job, or we lose, whatever that normal is in our environment, when we lose that, what ends up happening is our emotions become homeless. We don't know where to put them, right? What do we do with our emotions? What do we do with the love that we had for that fit person in the physical body? What do we do for that, with that, love and passion that we had for our job that we wanted to go to every day in that routine? So really, that unfinished business really begins with trying to figure out, what do we do with that? And one of the big things that I always ask people who are stuck in grief, who are stuck in years and years and not being able to move forward, is when we start to look at the messages and what people have gotten back from channeling sessions and encounters with hauntings and things like that, and positive experiences. We often find that those spirits are so far into that pure positive energy. They're so far into that love and joy and passion, because they've moved over into this expansive energy, and they're really waiting for us to catch up with that. And that's not something that can come overnight. First of all, it really can't. That's something that we have to work through. We can't go from being in grief to where they are right away. So many times people will ask me, why haven't I had that encounter with my loved one yet? I miss them. I'm so sad for them. I ask for them every night. But that's the problem, is that here we are in a place of lack, for instance, noticing that they're not there, missing them and hanging out in that vibrational range of grief, where they're over here up in this new vibrational range of joy, and they're calling us to them. They're calling us to them. Please come have the encounter with me. Please come up, bring yourself up that emotional scale. And, the messages that come through are always ones of peace. They're of, wanting to reassure that their loved ones, are okay. Since working on Paranormal 911 and haunted hospitals for the last number of seasons, I've been seeing this more and more and more. And anytime you get and dip into that negative side of hauntings and stuff, you're not dealing with something that's people anymore. That's a different thing. It's a completely different thing. So it's important to not blend those two things together, because it's two different phenomena. So the one thing that I really want to get across to everybody, and the big question for anybody who's dealing with grief and loss, and who is feeling like the breadth and the depth of their grief defines how much you love the person, which is not true. It's just not true. Is ask yourself this: what kind of legacy do you think that person wants to have when they're looking back at where everybody is in their life? Are they looking to have a legacy of people being sad, of people being depressed, of people not being able to enjoy a holiday, for instance, or Christmas or something like that, because they're in so much grief about that person? Do you think that is the legacy that somebody really wants for their loved one? And I guarantee you the answer is no. It just isn't. They're hoping, like, I promise you, they are hoping that when they look back, that they see, you laughing and living your life and being able to get to those high-flying places and enjoying everything it is about your experience in this world. They are hoping that they are not leaving a legacy of pain and sadness and depression. It's not what they're looking for. So it's something to always keep in mind. What legacy would they want you to have and to carry on for them? It's just so key. So I find that dealing with grief comes in three different stages, really. And there's three different coping skills and processing skills. I like the word processing a little bit different, more than coping, because coping seems like you're kind of white knuckling it. And that's not good. And I've noticed these three things: that there is happiness in insufficiency. And I'll get into that in a second. The ability to be the observer of your emotions. That's the second thing. And the third thing, and probably one of the most important things, is the ability to surrender. Okay, it is so important. So let's look at the idea of happiness in insufficiency. This concept actually came from Joseph Campbell. And Joseph Campbell was he was a brilliant philosopher, and of course came out with the amazing quote, "Follow your bliss." So he came up with this idea that happiness actually begins in insufficiency, and we have this label for insufficiency that we think of it as lack and lack-based and just a poor state of being overall. But what we need to understand is that when we are insufficient in something, that insufficiency is the catalyst that is going to move us to the thing that we want. It's going to lead us to that identification, as long as we are able to sit and start to look for the thing or whatever it is that we really want. So being able to sit in insufficiency, being able to realize that insufficiency is the catalyst to the hope, it's the catalyst to the joy, because we can't get there if we're not, if there isn't that gap, there's no journey to get there. So understanding the importance of that fear, the pain, all of that is a catalyst to the next thing that you want. And being able to see it as opportunity rather than being able to wallow and get stuck in that negative pattern that you're going to be stuck there for the rest of your life or something like that. We can't go there in our head. We just can't have happy without insufficiency. And the next part of this is to be the observer. Learn how to separate yourself from the emotion that you're having. You can be the observer of your emotion. And the best way to do that is to be able to get still, use some of the processes that we've been working on for the last number of weeks here, and be able to get in touch with that stillness that's beyond the emotion, that's beyond the grief. Okay, so if you notice, when you get super still, when you take a breath, when you let your mind just stop the thought, stop thinking, what ends up happening is that you'll notice that there's a space between the grief and the you that is the stillness. There's a space there. And once you can identify that space and you can observe the grief, then you've got the opportunity to hold that emotion like water. And I've used this analogy before, and I can't stress it enough, especially when it comes to this, is to be able to hold whatever that is, whatever that situation is, whatever that emotion is, like water. Because as soon as you do this, as soon as you're trying to force stuff, as soon as you're trying to force yourself to forget about it or be happy or whatever it is, as soon as you start to force it and you squeeze that water, it all falls apart. So the ability to be the observer, as I say, to get still, to find the space between you and the emotion, and to be able to observe it without judgment, without beating yourself up for it, without criticizing it, without telling yourself that you should be feeling differently. You are where you are, and where you are is fine. And it's oftentimes in those situations and that relaxing and that stillness that you begin to rebuild that communication and that relationship with whoever it is that you're talking to or working with in non-physical, whoever that person is that you've lost. You can start to move yourself very, very slowly up that emotional scale that we talked about in previous classes. And it's not going to be a success-only journey. It's just not. Sometimes you're going to find that you slip right back, that one day you're good, and then the next day, bam, you're back at the beginning again. But you're never really back at the beginning. You're never really back there. You're gonna be able to move yourself bit by bit, piece by piece up that emotional scale. And the thing is if you continue to remind yourself, hold on, what is the legacy that I want them to be leaving, or that they wanted to leave with me? And when you start to realize that legacy is not one of pain, it's not one of grief and hurt and depression, it gives you a little bit more motivation to realize, you know what, I can start laughing again. Give yourself permission to allow not only the sad emotions, but allow yourself the joy, allow yourself the laughter, allow yourself to giggle at that joke, all of that. It's just so important. And the more you do that, the more connected you are with that pure positive energy, which means the more connected you are with your loved ones as well that are in non-physical. And so probably the last, and I think one of the most important things about the grief process is the idea of surrender. And so many people have a misnomer about what surrender looks like, because I think so many people believe that surrender is a powerless position. It feels like you're not doing anything. It feels like maybe you've been told that means you're giving your power over to somebody else. We think of surrender like in war times, where we're just, we're putting up the white flag and saying, I'm done, I give up. And we have a negative connotation to that word. And we really shouldn't. Surrender is probably one of the most powerful things that you can possibly do, especially when you're facing something like grief, regardless whether it has to do with a lost loved one, a job, or anything like that, is to be able to say, you know what, there is too many moving pieces here. I can give this over to whatever it is for you, whether it be, what you call source, what you call God, what you call the universe, what you call, whatever it is. Just giving that over and stop the fight, because whatever we resist persists, right? We know that whatever we resist persists. If we resist things in our lives, as soon as we put anti anything to, whatever the issue is, whether it be war or drugs or whatever. We get more of it because we know where our attention goes. That's what we get more of. So being able to disengage, to disconnect, and instead of seeing surrender like this, I want you guys to start seeing surrender like this. And it's one of, as I say, it's one of the most powerful things that we can do. We're so engaged as physical beings to be grappling and looking for just physical stuff and physical action. We're so engaged with our physical world and enamored with things that we can hold and touch and physically maneuver, that we forget that we are really, really energetic beings, and the ability to let go, the ability to give over that emotion. We don't have to figure it all out. In fact, we can't. We just can't. We're not built for that. We're not supposed to. So being able, as I say, to surrender, to let it go, is just so key. So just to recap that. So we talked about the idea of happiness and insufficiency is seeing the insufficiency, seeing the lack as an opportunity, rather than turning around and seeing that lack as something that we're stuck in or that we're missing somehow. It's really not that. There is an opportunity, and let me tell you, that connection to the loved one that you're wanting, it's in the healing. That's where the connection is. Sometimes I'll get emails and things like that of people saying, well, how do I connect to them through the Ouija board, or how do I connect to them through a seance or whatever it is. Let me tell you, out of all the research that's been done, all the experiments that have been done, everything that has come out of the parapsychology world, the connection to your loved one, I guarantee you, it's in the healing. And being able to find that stillness, to be the observer of your emotions, to be able to find that space, as I say, that unique space between your emotion and the stillness and the being that is who you are, is the beginning place to be able to move yourself up that emotional scale. And as you're doing that, because as I say, you're going to go back and forth, as you're doing that, you're going to find the ability to surrender as well. So those are the such powerful steps that I have really found, and I'm not talking out of my hat with this here, because I've lost so many individuals in my experience. So for example, like my dad passed away when I was 21-ish. So I lost my dad, of course my business partner and best friend Stephanie Wirtz, who co-founded Entity Seeker with me. She passed away not long after I lost my dad. So there's been numerous losses in my experiences as well, that where I have had to work through this myself. So everything that I'm telling you guys is stuff that I have done and worked with as also, I found that it has been the things that has really moved me forward faster than a lot of other things that I've heard and experienced and things like that. So when you're dealing with anything like the grief process, sometimes you kind of have to let that undertow take you. And that's probably the best example I can give you guys of what surrender looks like. If you are, for example, fighting and battling through these emotions, if you're battling through the grief, if you're trying to white knuckle it, the first thing that a lifeguard will tell you, or any swim instructor, is that if you get sucked in with the undertow, if you let yourself get pulled under, because you're not fighting the ocean, it's just not going to happen, right? You are literally going to tire yourself out to the point where you just drown. And that is exactly true for things like grief as well. You will drown if you start to battle it and you're fighting it and you're trying to ignore it and you're stuffing it. As soon as we start stuffing it, let me tell you, those wounds bleed. They get infected and they bleed and they ooze, and it will bleed into every part of your life if you do not grieve it properly and deal with it. And so as you're letting that undertow take you, the surrender comes in knowing that it will pop you out. It will pop you out somewhere. It really will. And it will pop you out in a better place and a calmer place than you were to begin with. That is where you find the happiness, the beginning of that joy. It really is the beginning of that joy comes from when you are able to surrender. You know, it looks like insufficiency. It really does. But it's not. It's going to pop you out somewhere, and it's going to pop you out somewhere better than you were there before. And this applies, as I say, to anything, whether it be, you know, job issues, you know, whether we're looking at the world right now and a lot of people are grieving, you know, just our daily routine, right? We're looking at the daily routine, and I know people's sleeping schedules are all over the place now. You know, it's messed a lot of people up that have, you know, are used to just going to work, and they're used to seeing certain people. They're used to looking at their finances a certain way. That's all had to change. So grief comes in so many different areas. But at the same time, we've got the opportunity right now to really turn this around, to start seeing this as opportunity. What can we do? What are we doing different? How do we look at this going forward? How do we want to create our lives? Because let me tell you, the world has just hit the reset button. It really has. It really has hit the reset button. And we get to choose. We get to choose going forward. So I wanted to read you guys a little something today, because this is, I thought this was so fitting for the conversation this morning. And this is coming from Eckhart Tolle's Oneness with All Life. It's a little segment from his book, A New Earth. And I thought this was really key. Whenever tragic loss occurs, you either resist or you yield. Some people become bitter or deeply resentful. Others become compassionate, wise, and loving. Resistance is an inner contraction, a hardening of the shell of the ego. You are closed. Yielding means inner acceptance of what is, and you are open to life. When you yield internally, when you surrender, a new dimension of consciousness opens up. If action is possible or necessary, your action will be in alignment with the whole and supported by creative intelligence. The unconditioned consciousness. Circumstances and people then become helpful and cooperative. Coincidences happen. And if no action is possible, you rest in the peace and inner stillness that comes with surrender. I love that. I had to read that today because I think he is spot on with all of it. And I think as we're moving through this, as we're going forward, you know, everything is change, and it always looks like chaos at the beginning. It always does, because our minds can only comprehend so much of the picture. We are so limited as to what the universe orchestrates and looks at, and our view is so small. But really, you know, let the undertow take us for a little while. It will pop us back out, and it is starting to already, as we start to see curves flattening in different parts of the world. And it really will be something, I think, at the end of this, where we will find that well-being. We already are. Well-being abounds. So I wanted to give you guys a process today that you guys could do and work with. And the question that comes with the process is, do you have space? Just because we've talked a lot about space and making that room for that non-physical connection. Do you have the space in your home, in your life, in your world for the thing that you really want? Do you have the space? Now, this might be physical space. It really is. Sometimes it's looking around. Like, say, for example, hey, wait a minute. You know, I would love to have a dog. That would be really cool. Maybe that's on your wish list. I'd love to have a dog, or I'd love to have a partner, or I'd love to have, but do you have the space for it? Have you made the space? Have you made the space in your cupboard? Have you emptied a drawer for them? Have you cleaned your house up? Is your house a mess? Have you been at home this whole time and everything's exploded? Have you made the physical space for what you want? if you are, if a, say for example, if a new puppy is on your wish list, do they have a space in your kitchen where you want to put their food bowl? I want you guys to start looking at what it is you want and whether or not, because we've done a lot of that over the last little while, with all the journaling and all that stuff that we've been doing. So is there space in your physical space for the thing that you're really looking for? For example, are your finances caught up? Are they caught up? Like if you're hoping for wealth or more money or, an influx of cash, is there space? Is there room? Are your finances in order for you to, be blessed with that influx of money? You have to look at whether or not you are prepared to receive, because if you're not, then you got to check in with how much you believe that you deserve what it is you're asking for. So that's what I want to give you guys today is start thinking a little bit about your physical space. Put on the really nice incense that you love or a really great candle. How can you make that space more welcoming for that energy? And start to consider not just how you're thinking and feeling, but how you're preparing your world for the greatness that can really come into it. So that's what I would encourage you guys to do today. And the fun thing is, I've got something super fun for you guys this afternoon. I was so excited to see this. I thought this was the neatest thing. The Tim Burton Museum. I know. The Tim Burton Museum is doing a virtual tour of the exhibit. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm a Tim Burton fan. I loved Sleepy Hollow and The Nightmare Before Christmas and all of the different films and whatnot that he's produced over the years. And his characters, Beetlejuice was so good. It was so much fun. I loved Beetlejuice. One of the best ghost movies, I think, on the planet. So they have decided they're doing a virtual tour, and I will post the link to it so you guys can go explore because it's so cool. They've got giant sandworms and all sorts of stuff. It's really neat. So I'm going to post that today. So you guys can check that out. It will be on the Entity Seeker Facebook page right here. So you guys can find that and play around with it because it's just super cool. So you got to do it. For those of you guys who are new here today, I wanted to let you know, as I do every day, all of the spiritual healthcare classes are on youtube.com/entityseeker, as well as entityseeker.ca, which is the official site. So if you guys go to the media and video page on entityseeker.ca, you will find all of the spiritual healthcare classes. And there's also another video that I did about 2 years ago on the subject of grief also, which goes into some more detail and whatnot about some of the processes and whatever that I've talked about here today. So that's on there too. There's tons of stuff on there, lots of videos and stuff like that. And April 18th, guys, everybody in America, April 18th, Paranormal 911 Season 2 will air on the Travel Channel. So check it out. Enjoy. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was really fun to film. Richard and I had a great time, and a shout out to Richard Eastep, my co-star in Haunted Hospitals and Paranormal 911, because he is an EMT, and he is on the front lines right now doing so much work. So thank you, Richard. Thank you for all our first responders. They need our care. They need our thoughts. They need our love. They need all of that right now because they are doing incredible work. So we're putting that out there. Now, everybody, our health affirmations. Everybody take a breath. It is natural for me to be well. Even if I don't know what to do in order to get better, my body does. I have trillions of cells with individual consciousness, and they know how to achieve their individual balance. When this condition began, I didn't know what I know now. I don't need to understand the cause of this illness. I only have to gently, eventually release this illness. It doesn't matter how it got started because it's reversing its course right now. And there is no hurry about any of this. My body knows what to do. Well-being is natural to me, and my inner being is intricately aware of my physical body. My cells are asking for what they need in order to thrive, and Source is answering those requests. I'm in very good hands. My only work is to relax and breathe, and I can do that easily. Everybody take a breath. Thank you guys for another amazing morning of spiritual health care. As I say, I'm so grateful that we got to tackle this subject this morning. Good morning, Dawn. This will be on replay for you. I am just so grateful we got to tackle this morning and be able to have a discussion about it. Again, if you guys have questions, please keep sending them. I'm stockpiling all of them, so if I didn't get to them, in the last couple of days, don't worry. They're all in a list. So please keep messaging me with them, emailing them, find me on Twitter, and things like that. And please keep sending them in because you guys are what's fueling spiritual healthcare every day. And you guys are what makes this just absolutely worth it. And your responses have been so incredible and so inspiring. And they inspire me to keep doing this every day. So thank you guys so, so much. Have an amazing Easter Monday, everybody, and I will see you right back here tomorrow morning on Spiritual Healthcare at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, and see you guys later. Bye.